All right. Session 3 is devoted to Bartram and botany. And our first speaker in the session is Adam Arendell. Adam is a devoted naturalist and native plant advocate with a deep-rooted passion for plants. Since 2015, he has been exploring the backroads and natural areas of Northeast Florida, documenting rare and endangered plant species, and maintains a home nursery of native plants to support local restoration efforts. He is an active member of the Ixia Chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society. Since 2016, Adam is committed to protecting Florida's botanical heritage and inspiring others to see the value and beauty of Florida's native flora. He currently serves as Director-at-Large for the Florida Native Plant Society and lives in Jacksonville, Florida, with his wife Amy, their son Oscar, and 2 dogs named Dolly and Willie, which gives you probably an idea of his musical taste. And he will tell us about the Ixia. So welcome, Adam.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. Let me just do a quick little test here. Okay. All right. My name is Adam Arendell. I'm a director at the Florida Native Plant Society. I also am a director at a local chapter called the Ixia Chapter. And our main mission at the Florida Native Plant Society is the conservation and preservation of Florida's native plants and the ecosystems that they're found in. Now, the society was first started in the early 80s, and we have over 31 chapters that are found throughout the state of Florida. And each chapter takes on the name of a special plant or an ecosystem that's only found in that area. So our chapter took on the name of the Bartram Ixia. So we are really proud to take on the name of Bartram Ixia. And we help lead the conservation efforts and help educate the public on just how beautiful and unique this flower is. So what is the Bartram Ixia? The Bartram Ixia is it's an iris. It's in the iris family, the Iridaceae. And the scientific name is Callidoria colestenia. And Callidoria, that genus, that is a mix of 2 Greek names. Kalle is basically a covering or a sheath, and then dore, which is spear-shaped. And they're alluding to what the shape of the bud looks like before it opens. It's basically like a sharp spear that points upwards. And the colestenia, that's the species name, that is Latin for celestis. And celestis means blue or heavens, which is obviously alluding to the color of the flower. Now, over the years, it's had a few synonyms, meaning the same names, named by other people. And William Bartram, since he was the first European to discover the Ixia, he named it Ixia colestenia. Now, Bartram was more familiar with these Ixias that were found over in Africa. And so later on, taxonomists figured out that the Bartram Ixia wasn't really related to these South African or these African Ixias, but more to these South American flowers. So they ended up renaming it Salpingo stylus. Now, salpingo is a Greek word for trumpet-like style or tube. And they're referring to the trumpet-like style is very characteristic to this plant. Other characteristics are the 6 large blue-violet petals. They're very fragile petals as well. And 3 yellow anthers, which produce the pollen. Now, the illustration on the left, you can see the entire plant if it was out of the ground. It has these little wispy, tiny little roots, and it has a storage bulb like other irises. So once it flowers, it goes dormant for the season, and it stores all of its energy in these little bulbs. Now, I just mentioned William Bartram, of course, was the first European to discover it, and he named it. And this is the actual drawing that he made of the flower. This is, of course, the famous illustration that we all know and love. And actually, it's considered the type specimen of the plant as well. So if you're ever researching the literature for voucher specimens of this plant, you will come up and see this illustration, which I just think is really fascinating. And so Bartram was, of course, commissioned to explore the Florida territories by Dr. John Fothergill in 1772. And he collected tons of seeds, specimens, did lots of drawings. Of course, we all know he's a prolific illustrator. And he was also a really good writer as well. So out of this entire journey, he wrote which is now the book Travels by William Bartram, which I'm sure all of y'all are familiar with. One of these really great natural history books for Florida. So the main timeline for the discovery of the Ixia, this is in 1774 when Bartram first finds it outside the Dexter Lake area. This is Volusia County. Now this area is actually the most southern area or southern locations of where the Bartram Ixia is found. And we don't find it down there anymore, which I find really puzzling. So it's probably, there's not that many people that go hiking or observe out there. It's still kind of a rural area. But the Ixia wasn't discovered for another 150 years after Bartram discovered it. And that was John Kunkel Small discovered it in 1931. And John Kunkel Small was one of our predominant and really famous botanical explorers and botanists of the southeastern Florida. And he actually did his dissertation on the entire flora of the southeastern United States, which is a huge, just imagine that, there's thousands of plants there. So he proves that it exists. And then in 1940, William Morrell, who was a mycologist from the New York Botanical Garden, and also a botanist for the University of Florida in Gainesville, established its range. So fast forward into the 80s, 1988, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does an extensive survey in Northeast Florida, and that's when they first find its current locations in 7 Northeast County, its range. So with all that data that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife found, they created this map, and all these red dots are all of these locations of where they found it during this extensive survey. Now, for some reason, this map is cut in half, so if you look in the middle, there is some overlap there. But to get your point of reference here, the map on the right, if you look all the way up, you see the start of 295 in Jacksonville, Florida. And in the middle of that is the St. Johns River, just to give yourself a point of reference. Farther south, you see Fruit Cove. And then the map on the left, you start to see the Camp Blanding area. If you look at the black line that starts the arrow, the little lake there is Kingsley Lake. So that's Camp Blanding. And so what I did, I overlaid all these observations onto a Google map, and I make it a reference point for myself when I'm ever out in these areas. I get to see if there are still either Bartram Ixia is blooming or if the habitat is still, there. A lot of these places haven't developed, unfortunately. So with all that data from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they were able to establish it as a state endangered plant. And the NatureServe organization, which is an organization that tracks biodiversity in the Americas, gives it a status of a G2 imperiled plant species. And what that means is it's highly vulnerable to extinction throughout its range. So out of the 60 or more populations that have been reported since the early 1900s, most of these have not been seen recently. And only a few of these are on preserves, basically, well-managed preserves. So its current distribution, and this is all based on recent data, is Duval County and Clay counties. These all have sightings on well-managed preserves. The St. Johns County had a sighting in 2013. And this is in the Nocatee Parkway, but all of these roads have all been widened recently, so it doesn't really look good for these populations. And I know during the last census data from 2010, St. Johns County saw over 40% growth, which is just a tremendous growth. And what that means is a lot of our natural areas were developed. So it doesn't look good for the Bartram Ixia and the St. Johns counties. And then the counties, the rural counties like Putnam, Bradford, Baker, and Union, these all have historical vouchers from the early 1930s and 50s. So these counties don't see much growth. So it's highly possible that these historical vouchers still exist. But we just need to do more roadside surveys to see. Now the map in the circle here, that is all from iNaturalist.org data. Now iNaturalist is a platform, it's kind of like a social media platform where you're able to upload observations of any kind of species found throughout the world. And what iNaturalist does, it connects you to scientists and other citizen science to help you identify observations. And so what happens when you upload an observation to iNaturalist, if your species is considered threatened or endangered, iNaturalist will default to obscure the location, which means they will hide it. which is a good thing because people still, they poach plants basically, and specifically carnivorous plants, orchids, and these charismatic plants like the Bartram Ixia. So it's a good thing that they hide this data. So as you can see on the map, they're not exact points, they're just kind of like an approximate area. And the reason why we don't see the Bartram Ixia is it's very challenging to find. When it's not in flower, it's basically in this grass leaf stage, and it blends in with the surrounding flora. It's just very difficult. And then after it flowers, it dies back. It goes dormant into this little storage bulb, and it's just going dormant. It's waiting for fire to come through and clear out the understory to basically wake it up. So this photo right here, if you look close, there are Bartram Ixias in it. And it's just showing just how difficult it is to find, even when it's in flower. So if you look on the bottom left, there's an Ixia. And in the background, there's about a few dozen more Bartram Ixias. So the best time to see the Ixia, that's in mid-April to late June. But we've seen it blooming all the way through late October. And this is predominantly because of a fire regime's change. So it can bloom very late. But through all of our observations of when fires have started and when the Bartram Ixia blooms, it's typically after 34 to 60 days, that's when we see the Ixias start to bloom after a fire. So that gives us some pretty good observation points of when to visit. And if an area has a really good fire regime, a good fire schedule, like every year or so, you can get these mass blooms, these flushes. And that's what the photo on the right is, just shows this amazing flush of Bartram Ixias. And it just reminds me when I read The Travels by William Bartram. He has this like wonderful quote when he's walking through this wonderful savanna. He's seeing all these wonderful wildflowers he's never seen before, and he comes across this super bloom of Bartram Ixias, and he says, "Behold the azure fields of cerulean Ixiae." So every time I witness a super bloom, I kind of think of that quote. I'm like, oh, Bartram saw the same thing. So if you're going to see the Ixia, you got to go really early. This flower opens up right when the sun starts to rise. And they typically have a 2 to 3 hour window before it closes, so around 10 a.m. And that really depends on the weather. If it's cooler out or it's overcast, the Ixia will just take its time to open up very, very slowly throughout the morning. And they will typically wither away by noon if that weather is cool or overcast. So where do we find the Bartram Ixia? So we find it in these mesic or wet pine flatwoods and savanna habitats. These habitats are characterized by, of course, seasonal fire and longleaf pines, basically. And you can see this is a perfect example of the habitat. Longleaf pines are spread really far out. And what that means is sunlight is able to penetrate the understory. And that's really important for this habitat. As you can see, a lot of the pine trees, they have fire scarring. And the fires clear out the understory. And this entire ecosystem, plants have evolved with fire. So this clears out the understory and stops a lot of these faster competing plants from shading out everything. So these habitats have high biodiverse ratings. Like they have tons of plants. And of course, we all know what eats plants, it's a lot of animals. So in these habitats, we see a lot of rare species of animals, such as the Bachman sparrow, which only lives in these habitats. So this is a highly endemic, this habitat highly needs fire. It's evolved with it. Here's another great example of a habitat we can find the Ixias. So this is Bayard Conservation Area in Clay County. And when I took this photo, this area needed a burn. You can see how the palmettos are kind of overgrown. But this area I find a lot of Bartram Ixias in. And both of these locations, the first photo, that's Julington Durban Preserve, and this one, Bayard Conservation Area. Both of these locations are owned and managed by the St. John's Water Management District. And they do an excellent job of clearing out invasive plant species and doing prescribed fires in these habitats. So there's a huge list of associate plants that call these ecosystems home. So this is just like a short list. So the first species we see are our pine trees, of course, our longleaf, slash, and pond pines. Then we see a whole host of wildflowers like blackroot, our meadow beauties. And then we see wiregrasses. Wiregrasses are an incredible species that's evolved with fire in these ecosystems that will only set seed if a fire comes through and clears the understory out. So they're looking for bare mineral soil basically after fires. And then we'll find a whole host of milkweeds in these habitats. Forgot to mention the gallberries. The gallberries are the fast competing shrubs that are native, but they need this fire cycle to come through and clear things out. We're going to see some other kind of wetland plants that we find them in lots of other habitats like bog buttons, ladies' tresses, which are Spiranthes orchids. And then last but not least are Sarracenia minor, the hooded pitcher plant. And I really love this photo right here. You get to see the pitcher plants with the Ixias. It's not uncommon, but I just find it just amazing to see them together like that. So there is a look-alike for the Bartram Ixia, and that's the Nemostylus floridana. The common names for this one is the celestial lily, the fall flowering Ixia, or the happy hour flower. Now, that last name was coined by one of our famed wildflower photographers, Roger Hammer. He says he coined that name, and it's because they bloom in the afternoon basically, and they bloom in the fall months, so September and October. So the Nemostylus has the exact opposite blooming, cycle that the Bartram Ixia has. And as you see on the bottom of the map here, that's historical range. Now, at one point, both of these flowers, the Ixia and the Nemostylus, probably the ranges overlapped, probably in St. Johns County, but it's highly unlikely nowadays with the rate of development that's been going on. So what is the Ixia's ecological role in the habitats? What is it good for? So I tried to look up a lot, there's no research basically, what I was trying to say. There's no research on the pollination for this plant or any ecological studies. So basically this is all from like personal observations and iNaturalist data. And we can see that it's just a great pollinator. So we see lots of bee flies, hoverflies, and these are all pollinators basically. All these flies, they eat pollen. We see sweat bees. Sweat bees are a really cool little insect that I find on a lot of wildflowers, but sweat bees, they're really cool too. They take these like little crescent-shaped moon shapes out of flowers, the petals and leaves, and they use them as brooding material for their babies. So they make little holes in the ground, and they'll take the little crescent shapes that they chew off of the flowers, they'll roll them up and lay their eggs in them. So they have a really interesting cycle. And then, of course, we see bumblebees are pollinating them. And I had yet to see any Lepidoptera, like butterflies or moths, pollinate this plant. And I say that because it has that trumpet-like style. I mean, that has nectar in it, I'm sure. So we just need more research and observations to see that. And the best ways to protect this plant is like any other habitat or plant in Florida. We need to protect the natural areas. We need to protect as much as we can, specifically the mesic pine flatwoods. And then when we protect them, we need to manage them as well. That's another crucial step. We need to burn them. We need to put fire on them every 1 to 3 years, which replicates the natural fire cycle. So the Ixia is an endangered plant, but you can also grow it as well, and it's not that difficult to do. You just need moist, sandy loam soils. It loves full sun. You can do part shade, but it will do way better in full sun for you. And you can propagate it by seed. If you know someone that owns property that has Bartram Ixias on it, you can ask them for permission to get some seeds. And then you can divide the bulbs. And I have a few Bartram Ixias in my little home garden, my little garden. And so every year after they flower, they kind of go dormant for a little bit, and you kind of lose track of the Ixias. So what I do, I usually I take out all the bulbs and I repot them up basically, and add a little bit of time-release fertilizer, which is good because it just slowly gives it that little bit of nutrient boost that kind of mimics the fire that would release minerals to the soil. Now this is a really weird little deformity I've never seen, but my friend Betsy Harris captured. This is called fasciation. Fasciation is a rare genetic deformity in a lot of plants. And what happens is it's basically 2 or more flowers that grow into one. And it just creates this really strange little plant. And I do know that a lot of horticulturalists kind of take this trait, this genetic trait, and they've done this with like roses, for instance. Roses naturally don't have all those petals curled up. They're typically kind of opened up. But I just found this just to be a really fascinating aspect of it. And so here's some really cool chapter history of the Ixia. So in 2016, our chapter, Roger Hammer reached out to our chapter, and he wanted a Bartram's Ixia for his new wildflower book. So we were able to take him out on a little excursion to find some Bartram's Ixias for his new wildflower book. And we were able to, get him to photograph some Ixias, and that is the same Ixia that you see in the wildflower book. So I just found that a really cool part of our chapter history. And you get to see really like how he photographs things. He uses a macro lens. He has 2 tripods, one that has a little plant clamp that gingerly like holds the flower so it doesn't blow in the wind. And he uses a light diffusing umbrella as well. So he's quite a character. So that is it, everyone. These are like all of my references. If you are interested in all the research for this, let me know. I can email it to Sam Carr and the Bartram's Trail Society. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to ask or answer.
Is anybody propagating it?
Yeah, so our chapter, we have a plant sale every April. And so we do have it. It's in limited numbers, of course, because the Bartram's Ixia is not, we call it like a connoisseur plant. It's not like something that you can just put in anyone's garden just because it's so diminutive and it just disappears and basically you'll lose track of it. So it's not like the best plant to have in a garden. It's better for like restoration projects. But yeah, our chapter does have it in our plant sale.
You're selling seeds or both?
Just the plant, so the whole thing. So yes, ma'am.
So my husband and I got a big kick out of seeing the graph with the red dots.
Yeah.
In the bottom left, our names are there. We were the ones hired by Florida Natural Areas Inventory
That's amazing.
to do that survey.
That's so cool.
Back in 1988.
So I do know.
Keep going.
That's awesome. Yeah.
There, right there. Yeah.
That is really cool. Yeah. Thank you for participating in that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's right. And we saw the azure fields.
I'll have to talk to you after this. Right.
It's like a little small contract.
That's so cool. Thank you for bringing that up. That's awesome. It's very cool. Does anyone else have any questions? It'll just start with you. Sorry.
What are some of the other names of the chapters in Florida?
So we have the Magnolia chapter. We have Payne's Prairie. So it runs the gamut of like special plants for ecosystems. There's even a Naples chapter. They just call themselves after the county. But there was the Sea Oaks chapter. Pawpaw, thank you very much. I know you're a Florida Native Plant Society member. So yeah, it runs the gamut of that. So yes, Ann.
Can you grow them or keep them in a greenhouse outside their natural range?
I'm sure you can. They just they love full sun. So, and the Bartram's Ixia it likes it moist, but not too moist. You're never going to find this in a wetland or a wet savanna. You're going to find it in more of an open savanna that does get, flooding, but it's going to quickly kind of dissipate. These are all sandy soils, basically. Yeah.
What was the spelling? Is there, because I saw 2 different spellings they had.
For the Ixia?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Bartram. I think he named it IXEA. And then there's IXIA. So those are probably just taxonomic differences. And I think what happens in taxonomy, whoever's the first person to name it, I think it sticks. So the Bartram's Ixia, that's just the common name. So that's not like a scientific name. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is the happy hour flower also found in fire maintained flatwoods?
Oh, yes. Most definitely, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's another easy flower to grow too, basically, the Nemostylus. Any other questions? Yeah, Adon.
What is the closest living relative to Bartram's Ixia?
So it's the iris family. The iris family had the few famous ones that people most know of is, of course, the irises. Then it's going to be crocus, and I believe those are the saffrons that we all know and most of us love that seasoning. I think gladiolus, and I think it just runs the gamut of all of the iridaceae, that iris family. Those are the family, basically.
So there's nothing else in the schemes that we know of?
Nothing else what? Like what?
In schemes? So,
Oh, Caladoria. I don't think so. I think there's some Caladoria in South America. but no other Caledoria in North America. I think it's all South America. That was a good question.
Do you know the range?
Same strategy, Ira, small with white flowers. It comes up in the spring. I was wondering, do you know what that is and what the range of that is?
That sounds like the Zephyranthes.
Yeah, is that for
It has a
Zephyranthes.
much bigger range probably than this guy.
Yes, yes. So the Bartram Ixia is only found in 7 counties in northeast Florida.
You said.
Yeah, very, very small range. The Zephyranthes lily that you're saying, that's the Amaranth family.
It goes over into the Swanee.
Yep. Oh yeah, that's a very, very common and one of our beautiful spring ephemerals.
It's almost like this, except it's not purple.
Right, right. Did I hear a question over here? Yes, ma'am.
You said this, but what's the scale? When the flowers opened up, it was hard to see. Some
Right.
pictures look bigger than the others.
All right, yeah, this is a massive flower right here, but the Bartram Ixia is about 3 inches, maybe the size of a baseball, that kind of, circumference. So, but yeah, you're right, I could have showed like a size. So it's around 16 inches, I think. Sometimes they're like this, 16 inches. Yeah, it's not that big. Sometimes they can get pretty large, but they're no bigger than like 16, 18 inches. So.
When the flower dies, does it still stay green for the stem, the leaves stay?
Yeah, it goes in this, so after it gets pollinated, so the illustration right here on the left, you see it says fruit. So after it gets pollinated, these fruits kind of get engorged, and they're kind of like these succulent green fruits. And basically, you have to wait for them to dry out. And once they dry out, it has prolific seeds in them. And the seeds are around the size of like little BBs, basically. And if you look at them in a microscope, they're really rough. They're almost like a golf ball kind of, texture. They're really cool looking. But they germinate really well. It's an endangered plant, but it grows pretty easily from seed. It's just because its habitat requirements are very specific. That's why it's so rare.
First?
I don't know anything that eats it. That's another interesting ecological question that we just need more info on. So I'm sure birds might eat the seeds. Any other questions?
This might be, this was a good question, but when the flower opens up at a certain time frame, has there been any studies on the different insects that, or when it's sunny, they come out, or is there any connection in that time frame, especially in the year?
Yeah, I found no like pollination studies or research on the Ixia as far as there's of course there's studies on the William Bartram's connection and the locations, but there's nothing as far as like ecology or pollination roles that I've ever seen. So, yeah. Calling all students. Any other questions for anyone? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.